Hello, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time zone that you are in. Thanks for joining us to our today's webinar on SAP Digital Access, a case for the CFO. Before we start, some housekeeping matters. We will record that webinar and send the slide deck and the recording link to everyone who participated today after the webinar. Every one of the participants is muted for the sound quality of everyone that is attending. If you have any questions, we'd like to have this regardless as interactive as possible. Please use the question box in the webinar application, and we will always have an eye on the questions that were raised, and if they fit, we will answer them during the presentation, but the latest at the end of the presentation, we will run through the questions. So please go ahead and use that feature. So let's get started. Today I have with me Francisco Hansen. He's our Global Director Advisory on SAP licensing matters. Hello, Francisco.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this meeting.
So before we get into the topic, just a brief introduction of Focus Labs. Who are we and where do we come from? Basically, Focus Labs is a part of the larger Focus Group that was founded in 1980. Focus IT Solutions, our sister company, and the source of the whole Focus Group is an IT service provider that's in the German-speaking region, Germany and Austria, active with about close to 300 IT professionals that are consulting our larger clients, and out of them we maybe have 60 to 70 SAP consultants, but also any other IT developers, project managers, people who do DevOps, and so on and so forth. The Focus Labs was basically founded within the Focus Group in 2015 when we took on a very small company. They came with the product MQ. They started to develop this already in 2010, and we then jointly started to market it internationally, opened our office in New York, and following there, all the other offices that you see on the right-hand side, Berlin, New York, Cluj, Amsterdam, Mexico City, and London. End of 2018, we also started our second product line called ZQ, a tool that helps you dealing with user management in regards to authorizations and compliance within SAP. What makes us different from our competitors? Basically, if you have a look at the software asset management market, we are the only provider of a tool with a sole focus on SAP. As you can see also with our second product, we go exactly in this direction. And you see this by the fact that Francisco is here, our global head of advisory. We have our own consultants that help you using our tool and basically capitalize or take the best or receive the best results possible while using our tools. If you are interested and you like the webinar, I can just ask you to follow us more closely. Have a look at our blog, focuslabs.com/blog, where we blog in about every second week some interesting articles in and around the SAP licensing topic. Have a close look there. You can sign up for the blog, then you will receive frequent updates on what we publish there and whatnot. So let's have a look at our portfolio. What do we have as Focus Labs on offer for you? Of course, we have SAMQ, our license optimizer. The core of the product, not the topic of today's session, but the core of the product is the named user optimization feature. Basically what we do, we ensure a continuous compliant and best license position for every user in every system, and we do this fully automatic with our tool always in the background. And of course, that's the topic of today's webinar. We're touching digital access is maybe today the second most important licensing aspect of SAP, but we can also deal with things like authorization-based licensing, engine measurement, a very complicated topic for everyone to keep track, and we can also help you in transferring your contracts into the S4HANA world, and SAMQ helps you with making a scenario analysis, how your license landscape would look like after your migration to S4HANA, so you can plan your negotiations. On the right-hand side, you see the main features of SATQ. Basically, we are addressing their 3 use cases. The first one is either it's developing a brand new or improving your existing role concept and design. We bring best practices with it, and everything that you need to have to design a role concept that is as least complicated as possible, but still ensures you that you can implement the need to know principle and have the roles designed only as big as they need to be. And in times of GDPR, that's really the challenge that you need to be able to do. The second use case is around identity management. It's basically the 3 processes: joiner, leaver, mover. What happens with the authorizations a user holds? How can I automate the full process? How can I make it easy that you can ask for an extension of your access to the system, but everything is documented and still compliant? And that brings us to the third use case. This is ensuring compliance in SOD. At any point in time, make your life and your communication with the annual auditors easier, to have an easy documentation of your compliance status and an easy tool to track every process in your enterprise to ensure this compliance. Of course, there's coming, some nice to have features with it, like self-service password reset and the role optimization tool. So keep your in-use authorization concept as lean as possible. Check for automatically for redundancies that you can eliminate, and automatically make suggestions to expand your roles so that you have less roles on one individual. So all of this is covered within our SATQ product that will be part of our next webinar. But today, as we said, it's around digital access and SAP licensing. And Francisco is heading the advisory department, and what we do there is basically helping our customers. SAP license contracts are still complicated, even if you use a tool that makes the classification of users and the tracking and the transparency easy, but it's still hard, a lot to understand around licensing, and this is what our advisory department ensures that our customers have the best understanding and the highest transparency. Francisco, would you like to introduce what are you doing with your department?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah, just a brief introduction before we get into the subject matter we are going to talk about today. Well, within our advisory department, we have several areas. We have a little technical consulting area that will help you in from implementing software asset management tools for SAP and the authorization management tools, but more the strategic and business oriented part of the advisory team, which is what you see on the screen. Things like defending your company in audits, license optimization, migrating to S4HANA, negotiating with SAP at all, regarding anything that brings changes with it, like it would be a migration to S4HANA, like it would be renegotiating or exchanging licenses, acquiring new products where you need people that understand the price structures, the product structures of SAP, the terms and conditions that are not standard with SAP, but which you could negotiate with them, things like that. The idea is to bring you the additional data and experience that you might need to achieve better business results when negotiating with SAP in whatever business transaction you are about. So we have access to SAP's price lists, to thousands of contracts that we have been working with in the last years, going from barely $100,000 up to $1.8 billion, which is probably the biggest one we've been negotiating with SAP about, this kind of things. And we can help you just having additional tools in your pocket to get to the better business results. So let's get into what worries us today. Apart, of course, from COVID and its impact on the business, and your company is probably right now being very engaged in putting into action your contingency plans and your operations for homework and this kind of things. So now, one of the biggest drivers of everything related to software acquisitions, to licensing, is the constant increase of costs. It is due to users, to new products, to engines and database within SAP. And this is the driver and the reason why companies take time to do some license optimization and see how far they can just structure their demand in a way that they don't just misuse some of the things that they have purchased. That means being able to exchange licenses that are no more in use today for others that you might need, etc. Now, the issue with S/4HANA and migrating to S/4HANA today, very often the question is, what is the business case behind it? What is the driver and what is the explanation that I can bring to my CFO for spending now 2 additional millions for 10 to migrate an existing working platform, which is ECC, to a new platform, which is S/4HANA? What is the return on investment of this project? And this is something that companies are right now very often engaged with. We can also help you analyzing the business case, the costs related to it, and understanding the alternatives, understanding how to set up such a decision project. Now, digital access costs is something we'll talk about today, so I will not say anything about that anymore. The ties of subscription contracts in opposite to perpetual contracts, this is something that's worrying too. Basically, many companies today all over the world, they have a perpetual SAP on-premise contract. That means whenever the product isn't strategic anymore, they might decide to cancel maintenance and go on for 3 to 5 years without maintenance or with another maintenance, whatever. But you're somehow on the steering wheel and you decide what you can do. Now, when you move over to a subscription contract, you can't just cancel maintenance. You are tied. There is no way to really lower costs. It is difficult to change the platform. So it is very, very important to define your transition and termination strategies, like to define what will happen if we decide some point in the future to move away from SAP's cloud, from SAP's HEC to a different platform. What do we need to agree in? What terms should be included in the contract that consider this? Complexity of contract terms with growing amount of products like the cloud products, new business areas like human resources with SuccessFactors, Concur, etc. Everything that's new, that's coming up. Almost every company that SAP buys has a different price model, and SAP sometimes integrates it into the existing pricing model, sometimes keeps the existing model just not to well, have trouble with the existing clients of that company. And this leads to an enormous complexity of price models and negotiation parts when you just enter into these new areas like the cloud and the new products, etc., etc. Somehow people get the impression, this is at least what we hear, that they are in a disadvantageous position when negotiating with SAP, like SAP is in the power position, because it is difficult to migrate away from SAP, because it is complex, because it is difficult to understand. So our thing is here to set up a structured negotiation and provide you with the information that you need, the understanding of financial scenarios that you have in front of you, to just gain the power position and the leverage to understand what options you have and what you can do with that. Now, Martin, this is yours.
Yeah, let's get to the topic of this webinar, digital access, and let's have a look at the, at the theory, what's behind it, what changed, and what is this digital access? 2 years ago, everyone referred to indirect access, and that basically goes back to the old or the existing pricing in your existing old contracts. How was it priced then, and indirect access, and how is it treated today? So if you have a look at your existing old contract, you will see that you have to pay for using the digital core or using SAP. And what means using? Is this direct or indirect? It doesn't make any distinction of it. So the old model is, the theory behind is that there are users with hands on the keyboard using the digital core, inputting data, processing data, starting processes, ending processes, and produce documents throughout that process. And as I say, the contracts, they don't make a difference, they don't differentiate between direct and indirect use, they just talk about use. So also the theory is, if you are connecting an external system, that will be indirect access, you will have to pay a user license, unless you have a special agreement in place for maybe procure to pay. There are certain areas where you can have an engine-like agreement on this one, but in the bulk of it, it's hands on the keyboard, user-based pricing. So now in times of IoT, when this is changing, SAP is introducing now the new pricing model, digital access, and they have it right now out for 2 years. So what's the difference? The difference is now that they say, okay, you're connecting more and more things where there is no user, there is no human behind it, and it's harder and harder to say what's the hand on the keyboard use, right? Looking back at the Diageo case, they were able to define who has hands on the keyboard. They connected Salesforce for their distributors, and the distributors were able to raise POs starting in Salesforce, being automatically transferred to SAP, leading to a license fee that was based on the users at the distributors of theirs. So that could be traced back, and that was the court ruling that therefore they need to license those users. But in IoT times, it will be a sensor, it will be whatever in your production, and there will be no human interaction. This is why SAP is pushing for this digital access. The difference is now they introduced a pricing model that is volume based. So the more you produce with the system in terms of documents, the more you will have to pay. The nice thing, it's limited. It's not anymore priced for everything that comes from externally. It's limited to 9 different types of documents. We have a list later on of those ones. And in these documents, or the line items of the documents, there's a distinction between certain types, are priced, go together in one number, and this is what you have to buy now. But this comes now, we're getting a lot of different results, and this is what the webinar is about, our experience in the projects that Francisco and his group were running, and also some data that we gathered throughout those projects. So Francisco, up to you.
Yeah, thank you. One or more to details about this description here. What you see here, at least the graph, is a screenshot from some SAP documentation. And it suggests in some way that direct human access, that means dialogue users, is getting smaller. I'd like to confirm that, but this is not really happening. I mean, on the left side, we have like 6 dialogue users. These are only 3 now on the right side. This is not the reality we are confronted with. Any one of you that just was allowed to reduce his user license costs? I don't think so. So basically what's happening, the right side of this graph is bigger than the other one. And this reflects reality. Costs are still increasing. Now they have another tool, it is digital access, and you'll be charged for that. Now we have third-party CRM, very small here on the right side. And if you see the analogy or the similarities to Salesforce's logo, this is for sure not casual. This is a direct wink into what's happened. Salesforce was taking a lot of clients away from SAP, so they came up with this model to be able to monetize clients that decided to not go for customer for HANA or SAP CRM, but rather go to Salesforce. Then we have this little robot here, which stands for robotic process automation, which is something that is happening constantly with the projects we are participating in, a very important part today of where digital access is headed to. Now, let's get into the details here. We still have those two options, at least if you haven't migrated towards S4HANA yet. If you are on S4HANA, you got to license via the new model. This is the one on the right side. This is what SAP calls outcome-based. We'll discuss about that. And then you would pay for this 9 types of documents that other applications are producing into SAP. On the left side, well, if you're an S4HANA, I said you are only able to license for the new model. If you are on ECC, you may choose between the legacy, the old model, and the new model. The legacy model means you would be, for example, paying for the people working on your Workday or Salesforce with user licenses, normally limited professional user licenses concretely, and then 2 engines, 2 virtual engines. I say virtual because there is no software behind them. This is the allowance to have a certain amount of sales and service orders in your system and purchase orders. Which of both options is the best one? You got to find this out. This is not something you can answer in general. During our projects, we compare both options, do the cost analysis and the cost estimation for both options, and then give the client a recommendation on where to go. So what are the originators that we see for digital access? We already talked about CRM like Salesforce, Microsoft, etc. Then we were talking about robotic process automation, which is a very general thing. You could automate processes within any software with RPA. Then we are very often seeing web portals, web shops, kiosks. For example, we just had a client, a retail company with supermarkets. They had kiosks where their clients could be looking into their account status for their loyalty cards and payment cards. This is a typical example that we see quite often. Then the point of sale systems, of course. Let's assume you have some kind of customer-oriented business, a retail business, and you have point of sale systems from IBM, Winkler, Nixdorf, whoever, and they are not SAP, but they are connected with SAP, transferring every receipt that you generate with the system and the financial movement. Maybe you have a payment system for your payment cards, credit cards, loyalty cards, and those payments, those inquiry for disposition of credit goes to SAP, comes back. You're transferring data from those systems into SAP too. Very often we see companies having very specialized warehouse management tools, not from SAP. And this is also a big generator for digital access. Logistics management systems. With bigger companies who have acquired or merged with third companies, They have other ERPs in place, smaller, bigger ones, Oracle, Great Plains even still there, Microsoft, and they connect them to SAP, make exchanges of financial transactions, financial movements, etc. And then apart from those systems that produce this eventually some of these 9 document types on the right side, like sales, purchase, service and maintenance, material invoices, etc. Different kind of documents that are the ones that SAP is counting. For the old licensing, the legacy licensing method, you got to look into the amounts of indirect users that you have. How many people are working in Salesforce or Microsoft systems? How many of them are internal users? Others might be suppliers, clients. You might have IoT devices producing data that is also landing into SAP, things like that. Now, what is the result of these originators that we see in projects? Let's look at some numbers that I put together out of some of the last projects that we've been doing. Before I get to explain those numbers, let's look at the left side of this slide. Understanding the cost impact of digital access. Now, SAP was saying, I always forget about the term, outcome-based. This is an outcome-based licensing model. Is it really? The amount of digital access documents, it depends much more on the client's IT infrastructure and his business sector, the branch he's working in, than its outcome, as SAP names it. Now, why is that? Of course, it is a difference if your company is very SAP strategically orientated, means you have all of your systems with SAP, or you have more a best of breed approach where you have for certain tasks like CRM, you have Salesforce. For your human resources, you use Workday, etc., etc. Different kind of systems connected to SAP, all of them producing digital access documents that land into SAP. So this is really the game changer in this licensing model, not so much the question of what is your EBITDA, what is your revenue margin, what is the amount of employees. So problem is, if this model doesn't suit to your company, if this model ends up with your company having like, and these are real examples, let's say SAP maintenance costs of $200,000, but potential digital access costs of $20 million, and these are real examples. Concretely, this one on the top side with a 72 million documents was in that range. Of course, higher costs. This is a list price, not taking into account the discounts, the volume discounts of more or less the half in euros. So talking about some $30 million against $200,000 in SAP maintenance. In this case, 800 employees, so less than 200,000 in maintenance, but here a potential cost of 8 million euros and for digital access. So you see there is no correlation at all between employee number or company size and the amount of documents that they produce. You have some bigger companies here with 100,000 employees and 2.8 million documents produced. But you have also this company with 60 million and only 800 employees, this one with 72 million, whatever. Look at this middle field, 1.1 million documents means €500,000 in payment. And this is for this size of company with more or less 5,000 users, still a bunch to be paid. So digital access costs we are talking about here that we have seen go from $2,000 to $11 million. I'm not saying clients paid this. I'm saying this is the risk exposure. And then we started negotiating with SAP and trying to find alternative solutions for that, of course, which is important because, I mean, as said, this doesn't suit the real SAP contract sizes. Okay, now, what do we do when we find such situations? What is our approach to find mitigation for such licensing situations? First thing that a client was asking in this webinar, when we did it in another language this morning, they were asking, should we approach SAP and start assessing this risk and looking into this? Well, in my opinion, you shouldn't. SAP is auditing about 50% of their clients today on a regular basis, and it seems like only a part of them are being audited for digital access. So on the one hand, SAP is saying was saying at the last Sapphire that they would be charging every client for digital access in the future. On the other hand, they are not really doing this today. So first thing is, in my opinion, you should be getting your own independent assessment on that, and not ask the company that is trying to charge you for digital access on how much they should be charging you. There is a certain conflict of interest in that. Secondly, you need to find out definitely and desperately what your digital access risk exposure is. It might not be anything. I didn't tell you about this graph here. There were also 2 clients with exactly 0 document counts, so no risk at all, today at least. So, but you should understand, what is it? Are we talking about $5,000, or are we talking more about $10 million in risk exposure? Do we have an issue that our CFO needs to know about? Is there an unplanned cost of whatever coming next year in case SAP decides to lead an audit for digital access, which is happening, and these are the kind of projects we are engaged all the time with. So assess the risk by yourself. Understand what are you fighting against? Is this a little risk? Is this nothing? Is this very big? And we need to really go into the details. And then let me help you understand what you can do. Basically, first of all, is you need to measure that. There is an estimation tool from SAP that's included there. We have this kind of things with our software asset management tool with SAMQ, where you can look into that, into relevant transactions, relevant originators for digital access, and especially the document estimations. Then you should look into the alternative, which is the legacy model, indirect access. So how many people, real people, are accessing your SAP system through other applications? Once we have led those measurements, estimations, then we get into investigating the use cases. So to understand what is exactly happening here. Is it our CRM system producing orders that go to SAP through this interface and producing this amount of documents? Is it the warehouse management system that is producing the documents? Understanding exactly and in detail who is producing this, what interfaces is the system using, how is data being delivered into SAP, and what is SAP counting there? What is SAP finding in their counts? We, of course, discuss about technical alternatives if it would be more interesting to go another way with and avoid the digital access if possible whatsoever. We then dimension the risk in terms of costs, considering the digital access adoption program from SAP, which is going, as far as we know, now till end of April this year. This is a 90% discount on digital access. SAP hasn't said yet if it will be prolonged after that. We'll see about that. And then we determine the action plan. What is it? Do we need to buy other licenses? Do we just need to make financial provisions for the next year in order to be prepared if SAP comes with an audit? And If you are already within the audit with SAP and they have already requested for you to purchase some additional licenses, we of course are able to help you negotiating with them and understanding what's acceptable, what not, what could you do, what have other clients successed in, and how could you approach this. Now, so our advice is don't ask SAP about how much they should be charging you. Take care of this yourself, if necessary, with external support. Now, digital access is a new generator for additional revenues for SAP. It doesn't compensate a changed situation in the market. The changed situation are new things, new technical things coming up, like Internet of Things and robotic process automation, etc. Yes, but the real issue here is people deciding to go for Salesforce, people deciding to go for Workday, for other systems. And now SAP is taking an approach to make it expensive for them to go to other systems instead of choosing SAP systems. Now, in my opinion, you can use this yourself. I mean, if you are about to introduce a CRM system in your company, and SAP is threatening, like it is happening sometimes, that if you go to Salesforce, they will charge with digital access. Use this in your negotiation with Salesforce whatsoever. I mean, this should be a free decision based on whatever system suits better to your situation, for your requirements, and for whatever. But don't let digital access be like a leader in any kind of decisions. This is not the point about it. Now, we have to accept that this is an issue. This is a licensing rule that exists today, and we have to deal with it, deal with the risk, and take movements in that direction. Now, some additional updates of what's happening right now. You may already have heard that SAP S/4HANA, you have a bit more leeway regarding the migration. Now you have 2 more years. It was originally up to 2025 you were allowed to migrate to S/4HANA. Now it's 2027, and with 3% additional maintenance, you can prolong that until end of 2030. Only thing that is not clear yet is if you're using Oracle 19c, they have a maintenance, end of maintenance in March 2026. So it is not clear what will happen between that and 2027 or 2030 if you still will be able to use 19c. We don't know about 20c, if it will work and be certified for SAP too. I mean, there is some time still on the way to get there. We'll find about that. Just keep this in mind that this is something that needs to be cleared. On the other hand, if you already moved to S/4HANA, you still have till end of 2040 to be using S/4HANA. Okay.
Okay, now we want to know from you where you stand with your negotiations, and would be interested whether you already negotiated your digital access or digital access agreement with SAP, and if you had so, did you have to purchase a significant amount of licenses, or didn't you? Did you have already an agreement in place that was covering this? And while we're running that short survey, I got the first question in, Francisco. If I renew my ECC contract, am I obliged to use the new model? With the new model, I think it's a digital access pricing model.
You said if you, let me read through it. I'm bad in. If I renew my ECC contract, well, we need to be very thorough here, very clear with the contract terms. First of all, normally what you have with SAP is you have an original contract, master contract, master a EULA with SAP, and then you have an agreement for yearly maintenance that is on top of that. You might in some point in time even do changes in your ECC contract and you're still on ECC. As long as you're on ECC renewed or not, changed or not, you are able to use both models. And when you migrate to S4HANA, the theory is then you are to negotiate about digital access with SAP. You are to, I'm saying, and this is not casually, the fact is we have seen exceptions. We have, I mean, you see exceptions for everything basically on the market. So there are people that still have been using the old model within S4HANA because the new model didn't fit at all. We have seen people using unlimited agreements for a time, at least for some years, for digital access. We see lots of options, and you have to be creative in negotiating with SAP because there are things to be done, and SAP is normally flexible about that. I mean, they want you to find a solution. Thing is, you have to speak to the right people. As always, keep in mind that people whose salary is based on commissions are not always the best advisors. So speak with the right people there.
Okay, so let's have a look at what the results from the polls are. And I also got as a question and answer for, so I will have that out for you. So not surprisingly, or the let's say the answers are surprisingly different from the German webinar, which just ran 2 hours ago. We had 50% that didn't assess it yet. I thought that a huge percentage of the ones joining that webinar will have or haven't assessed it yet. But we had I think we had like 25% who evaluated and had to purchase licenses, and we had like 30% who had not to purchase licenses. So in this case, I think, Francisco, it's fair to say in our projects, we usually see customers that have to purchase licenses, but maybe this is the reason why they come to us and ask us for help in a project or in a consultancy project, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my impression is really that in 80 to 90% of the situations, something had to be acquired. But on the other hand, the corrections from the original measurement of digital access to the final amounts, to the final document counts that are acceptable and payable, there is a very, very big difference. Sometimes we start with a client with an estimation of 100 million documents, and suddenly it gets down to, I don't know, some few millions, 3 to 4, because of subsequent documents, because of things where you have license exceptions that allow you to justify that this is not digital access. So you got to look really very deeply into the details here. But yeah, I feel.
Can you give some examples of how you rule out certain interfaces for not being counted? Because that might be, I told you that there's an answer for. We have one participant that is actually assessing digital access for the upcoming negotiations, who is in the middle of the process of getting a solution or implementing a solution together with SAP. What are examples? How are we helping customers to classify interfaces or documents out of the count?
Well, interestingly, very often I'm asked, well, we are only importing TXT files, CSV files, Excel files into SAP with some data sets. We're doing this manually, a user is doing that. But this is more batch orientated. It is not an online processing thing. So this doesn't count as digital access, does it? And the truth is, I fear, yes, it does. Definitely it does. The kind of interface that you're using there, whether you go directly into SAP or through a third-party tool like a middleware or something, doesn't matter at all. It is not so much a question of the technical interface that you're using. The most relevant question is, are this the data that is produced, is this one of the 9 document types that SAP is counting or not? And not so much how the data gets into SAP. Now, exceptions, the biggest exception, which is even the most difficult one, is definitely subsequent documents. Because this is a situation that almost 95% of companies get into. This is the situation where you are producing a sales order in another system that lands into SAP, or a purchase order. Out of this one, you obtain also invoices, financial movements, material movements directly in consequence of the first document. The order is processed. That means you need to move some materials in your company to operate this order. And you need to send an invoice to a customer or to your distributor, whoever we are talking about. And of course, every material movement, every sale is registered in your financial system. So basically, SAP's rule says we only charge you for the original document. But reality is, when they execute a measurement on your company, every single document will be counted. And you need to be very careful that you really exclude all of those subsequent documents from the first ones. If you don't do so, you might be paying like 10 times what you should be paying. So look very deeply into that and understand the derivation of one document type to 3-line items of the other type, 10-line items in average of the invoice, whatever. But you need to get into the details there. So these were 2 examples. I'm already seeing some more questions.
There are some more questions. My suggestion is let's collect the questions for another 2-3 minutes. Let's have our 2 closing slides, and then we have enough time to answer the questions.
Very
good. Go like that.
Yep. Okay. I don't know. I don't want to be repeating things. I think there was. Oh yeah, this was and regarding the accuracy of the measurement. Please understand that even though SAP has in USMM2 a digital access assessment tool where you can measure what's happening there, it is very important that, to understand that this is an assessment. This is a rough estimation. It includes all subsequent documents. It includes, in many cases, things that are not real digital access. So you need to really get into the detail and understand case by case what's happening. Engine measurement in general, not only with digital access, is not always accurate. I mean, SAP does a lot of work to improve that, to give you thorough measurements of what you have. But in some cases, especially what happens if you didn't install the last SAP notes, and even if, yes, sometimes you get to inaccurate measurements where you need to do manual corrections. It is important, once you have an audit finding, and you see there is a potential sub-licensing or something like that, to really get into the details and understand, do I really have sub-licensing? I don't know. Do I really have so many small size plants? Do I really have so many locations? Do I really have so many master data objects? Do a plausibility test on the measurements to make sure that what the system is measuring is correct. Okay, so far to that, Martin, we need to cut through things.
Yeah, let's go through just an a suggestion to you. If you find our content interesting, if you think we could be the right SAP experts to work with you, why don't you engage with us in a proof of value? It will take you or your team about 2 to 3 man days, split over a series of remote sessions. And what we will show you, will demonstrate to you how our tool SAMQ will work, and it will also give you about whether you have or whether you haven't a optimization potential within your SAP license landscape. So if you're interested in this, please come ahead and approach us by email or via our webpage after this webinar. So let's go, we have 10 minutes left until the top of the hour. Let's touch some of the questions that we were receiving. If I buy an app in SCP, the SAP Cloud platform, that read and writes data into the SAP ECC system, do I need to pay digital access, or is this pricing included in the app price?
Okay. First of all, the question is maybe. SAP Cloud Platform is basically a new development platform, the new development basis for third-party applications in the SAP development environment. So you say, if I buy an app in SCP, this is a third-party app. This is not anymore an SAP app. We are talking about a non-SAP application. If you have a non-SAP application, even though it does use the SAP environment, development environment, it would be a causant for digital access. Now, the general rule is SAP applications, when they communicate with SAP ECC or SAP S/4HANA, they don't produce digital access. So everything that stays within SAP does not produce digital access. Now, on the other hand, of course, if you have Salesforce producing data going through SAP data services or process orchestrator, whatever interface of data processing, middleware, whatever, and then it lands into ECC, you still have to pay digital access. And this is more or less the explanation of why with SCP, you may still have to pay digital access.
Okay, thanks. So we get the next question, which is digital access is measurable only on the digital core, in example, ECC only. Does that mean that a SAP landscape comprising of ECC and other subsystems like SRM, CRM, etc., would need to be measured under named user licensing? This would mean a complete digital access model is not available currently.
Exactly. There is absolutely no complete digital access model. SAP's licensing today with S/4HANA as well as with ECC is you pay for users, you pay for engines, for the database and digital access. These are the four licensing components. This is the way it is, and it will stay. Now, if you have a pure SAP environment, you can forget about digital access. You will only be paying for users, engines, and database. This is the model and how it stays.
Okay, the next question is in regards to what you touched before, Francisco. Basically excluding documents from the official count. The situation that the person has is a PO gets created in SAP ECC and I receive an invoice in another system. Should I only pay or count for the PO created in SAP ECC?
Well, the right answer is you should only be paying for the invoice, which is created in the other system. If I get it right, okay. Assuming that this invoice lands then in SAP again. The original external document is what you would be measuring. If you create a PO in SAP and this data gets into a third-party system, let's say Microsoft Workday, whatever, and they produce then an invoice and it stays there because you have your accounting in Workday and not in SAP anymore, then there is not even a digital access case. But if the second system produces the invoicing cost of the first purchase or sales order, and this invoice comes back to SAP, you'll be paying for the invoices as the original objects. This is the way we understand it, but you may, of course, contact me and we can discuss it more in detail. And yeah, I think this was the last one, right?
That is, for the time being, the last question. So the last, the last one out is, any more questions? that we're having. We are close to the top of the hour. I would say thank you very much for the participation and all of your questions. I hope we could deliver some information for you that are that you can use in your upcoming negotiations or in your ongoing negotiations. 83% didn't do anything yet. If you're looking for help in those negotiations, if you like the contract, feel free to reach out to us. Thanks for everyone participating today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening to us. And as said, feel free to contact us if you have additional questions, punctual questions, or just some help for support in a critical situation. We'll be glad to help you there. Thank you very much, everyone, and wish you a successful rest of the week and
yeah,
as
stay
little
healthy,
impact
everyone.
as possible. Yeah.
And
Bye.
thanks for participating. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.